Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's the bunkering?
The bunkering is fine. We have somehow, now that the world has shut down in basically everything, we have more Ohio State news than we possibly could have ever expected. So things are going great.
Good. I'm glad to hear that on both ends, both that you're doing well and that there is actually stuff to talk about. It's an oasis, but a legitimate oasis. It's not a mirage right now in our sports desert where Ohio State had some success on the recruiting trail for the first time in a long time. Because Tom, Ohio State, right day, not that great of a recruiter until maybe this past week.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Alford was a great recruiter until he was a terrible recruiter, and now magically he seems to be a better recruiter once again. Isn't that crazy?
So in this past 2-3 days, Ohio State has landed 4 verbal commitments from 2021 prospects. And I guess real quick, we can just tell you who they were, and then we'll talk about each of them. On the 15th, the Ides of March, it was 4-star cornerback Gerdeman Johnson out of St. Louis. And then came, I'm not sure if the exact order it was, first it was North Carolina running back Evan Pryor, the number 6 running back in the nation out of North Carolina. Then it was Cincinnati LaSalle corner Devontae Thomas, who is just a 3-star, but a lot of guys wanted, a lot of teams wanted him. So Tom, it's okay. Don't get crazy here.
Devontae Smith.
Yeah, what'd I say? Johnson?
You said Thomas. That's okay.
Thomas. That's okay. Devontae Smith, as you said, Tom. And then the fourth one, the most recent, was Andre Turntine, or Turntine. We'll figure it out later on. Out of Tennessee, corner safety, number 6 safety in the nation, printed 24/7 composite. So yeah, it was a pretty hectic couple of days, and we even were wondering, should we wait an extra day to see if anybody else is about to commit, because there are guys that are lining up. But this seemed like a pretty coordinated effort by Ryan Day. It's a recruiting dead period in terms of visits and things like that, but it's been anything but a dead period for the Buckeyes this week.
Well, and a lot of these guys have already been to Ohio State. They've already toured the campus. They've already seen the facilities. They've already met the players. They've already met the coaches. They already have a pretty good sense for what Ohio State is all about. And you don't necessarily have to see it again if you were pretty much sold the first time and you're ready to make a decision. The fact that it's a dead period doesn't necessarily preclude you from making a decision.
Well, I remember one of the things G. Scott said, I believe it was G. Scott said on when we talked to them on signing day. He was talking to perhaps Tony Alford, and I love it here, I love it here. And Alford was like, well, go home and let the high die down. If you still love it, then we we'll take your commitment. But yeah, it's like there's plenty of high to die down now. Like you haven't been anywhere in a couple of weeks. I think Gerdeman Johnson may have visited Clemson earlier in the month, which seems like forever ago, maybe like March 7th, something like that, which was 11 days ago, and seems like 2 years ago at this point. And so let's start with him, because he's the highest rated of the guys. The number 4 cornerback in the nation, 59th player of the overall. Another one of those guys out of Missouri, where Ohio State is doing pretty well. You've got Cam Brown, Jamison Williams, a kid named Ezekiel Elliott recently, and now this guy's the next one. He was one of the Gerdeman Johnson, or JK. The last JK/Gerdeman at Ohio State was Tom.
Little short guy, running back. Hang on, give me a minute. It'll
Sure.
come to me. Was it former Pirates catcher Jason Kendall? Is that who? No, wrong. No. It's been so long. I don't remember.
It's been, yes, and we are distracted. So J.K. Johnson, Gerdeman Johnson commits to Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Florida, Notre Dame, and Michigan, many others. And he was pretty much, I think, their top cornerback target. And Kerry Combs has been on the job for 3 months or so, and already gets his first big fish. That's you wonder. I don't think we had any of this concern, but you lose one good coach and you bring in another good coach. Sometimes there can be a recruiting gap there as you build relationships, but there's such a track record at Ohio State with both with Combs and both Ohio State, that I think it's easy to build that relationship, to build that bridge when you see everybody going to the NFL from here, and Kerry Combs now has even more of an NFL allure to him. So this is one that I think everybody saw happening pretty early, and no reason not to pull the trigger now.
Well, losing someone like Jeff Hafley, he has the really like effervescent personality. He has the NFL background. He has the proven track record of developing players and being able to develop NFL players. And it's like, well, how on earth are they going to replace him? I mean, he was someone that just in terms of interview settings, he was always the first person who was like, oh, I'll go talk to Hafley when it was like a group interview session. Like, I'll go get Hafley. You guys can go talk to someone else. Like he was always the one I wanted to talk to because it was, he was entertaining. He was insightful. He was fun to talk to. And if he's fun to talk to for us, when, a lot of the coaches are kind of like, well, I'm just here because I don't get fined, basically. When they're in a recruiting setting and they want to be there and it's in their job to be exciting and interesting and entertaining, like, they can turn it on even more. So when they lost Hafley, it was like, well, how are they going to replace him? And then as soon as you started hearing Kerry Combs' name, it was like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, okay, yeah, okay. And if you just mentioned his name, he hadn't been around the WAC for a couple of years. If you just mentioned his name, everyone was just kind of like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, Kerry Combs. It'll be exactly all the stuff that Jeff Hafley brought. Kerry Combs also brings in a slightly different package, but in the same way that everyone looks forward to talking to Jeff Hafley, everyone looks forward to talking to Kerry Combs. He's energetic, he's fun, he's exciting. He now has a couple of years of that NFL pedigree and being a coach and a position coach for a team that was a winning NFL team. That makes it a very easy sell for him. I mean, the last time he was coming to Ohio State, it was all personality because he was the guy who was the high school football coach, and you didn't quite know what you were getting the last time with him. This time, and it's like, oh well, their recruiting will be fine and their player development will be fine because he knows what he's doing on both.
Yeah, and being the Cincinnati legend that he is, it was no surprise when Cincinnati LaSalle cornerback Devontae Smith committed. He got an offer just in this past week, and to take everybody behind the curtain, I was like, Tom, well, I'll get that. I was going to write up the commitment piece like days in advance, and I see something where he still hasn't. He's going to be releasing his top schools, and it has a summer decision coming. And so I texted Tom like, yeah, he's got a summer decision coming. I'll get that piece written later. And then of course the next day he commits and committed. That's just the story of the way things go around here. But he had an offer from Alabama, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Penn State, Nebraska. So you look at the whole 3-star stuff. He'll get a bump because of all of these offers. When I see watching his highlights, he plays a lot of safety. He plays in the slot as well. So this seemed like a slot corner offer. But again, as we've told you before, Kerry Combs wants everybody to start out wide, and he moved them inside. But just seeing him, watching his film, can't say watching his film, watching his huddle highlights.
That's film of a sort.
You see a guy who doesn't shy away from the running game. 72 or 92 tackle as a junior, dynamic special teams returner, and just another guy that you bring in as many defensive backs as you can, especially the kind of system they're playing now. You fit them where they end up to whatever level they can attain. That's where you put them, be it out wide, be it inside, be it deep at safety, and we'll see where he starts. But yeah, I like. He seems like one of those guys who's going to move up the recruiting rankings. Although now that he's committed, maybe not. And it's going to be interesting, Tom, if there are no spring camps, which there aren't going. I don't know. How do you refresh rankings? Like, how do you move stuff up and down if there are no camps? And then how do you drum up business this is a different topic. How do you drum up business as a recruiting site if you aren't fluctuating your ranking? Tom, talk about whatever you want in regards to Devontae Smith or the recruiting rankings industry in light of the coronavirus.
Well, the recruiting rankings industry is really an interesting question. I think you covered the Devontae Smith end of things just fine. so much of it is based on in-person evaluation at camps. And if a guy goes to a rivals camp and performs well, you're going to see him shoot way up the rivals rankings and not necessarily up the 247 rankings if the 247 guys haven't seen. So without those camps, I wonder how much of it is going to be based on offers. And, well, if this is a kid that has an offer from Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State and Clemson, he must be pretty good, so we're going to move him up. So it may be a little bit more like it was in the old days as opposed to now, which there's a reason to think that might not be as accurate. I mean, it feels like recruiting rankings and the recruiting industry in general has gotten more accurate as time has gone along. And a lot of that is based on in-person evaluation. But, if Clemson and Alabama and Ohio State and Georgia and LSU are all offering a kid, that tells you that kid can probably play a little ball. So that's something that you're sort of relying on, the true professional evaluators, the coaching staffs and the personnel folks. And that does not necessarily mean that the rankings are going to turn into a complete crapshoot. But I mean, the rankings are going to have to change a little bit. I mean, they're not going to stay static. And I don't know how else they would do it if you're not going to have the in-person evaluation at camps.
What if you just have, because you have, there are national guys, then you also have regional guys. What if you take like the East regional guys and say, hey, look at the Midwest guy, look at the Midwest prospects, and take the Midwest guys, say, hey, look at the South prospects, take the South guys and say, hey, look at the West prospects, and get different eyes. And then maybe you can move stuff up based on new evaluations of the same film. Maybe that's one, in a way to just continue, because we're all in the same boat of trying to come up and drum up business. And it was interesting. I tweeted out the other day that with no like pro days or anything like that, NFL teams are going to have their best drafts ever because they're just going to have to rely on game tape. And like 2 minutes later, I had an NFL scout in my DM saying, "You are so right." And you base it off of watching football. And maybe that will make for more accurate rank this year when you're not caught up with this linebacker runs a 4.39. That's great, but why did he only have 46 tackles last year?
Yeah, I wonder if anyone on earth is going to be hurt more by this than like Utah State quarterback Jordan Love, who was, if you are a Mountain West football aficionado and or watched any Utah State at all last, it was like, yeah, he's fine. And then you see the NFL mock drafts and it's like, top 10 pick. It was like, wait, what? Is there, like, I looked and I'm like, is there another Jordan Love I'm not aware of? Like, what? Yeah, that's the kind of guy that, the measurables will look so good that people will talk themselves into like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. And it's like, what if you just watched and went, I think Deshaun Watson might be better than Mitch Trubisky. Like, what if you just watch the games and evaluate based on the fact that, hey, this guy couldn't beat out, I even forget who was the quarterback at UNC before Mitch Trubisky, but there was someone who was there before him and
Marquise Williams, maybe?
Marquise Williams sounds right, yeah. And it was like, he couldn't beat out Marquise Williams, and he only started for 1 year, and now he's the number 2 pick in the draft. Like, did you there's actually a league before the pros, right? Like, you can watch them, and you actually get a pretty good sense for who might be good at this. So, yeah, I am right there with you. Like, there might not be an industry that does more overthinking than the NFL draft industry, just because there's 4 months to talk about it and 4 months to think about it, and everyone talks themselves into, out of the stuff that they know the last time there's real football going on and into completely different stuff. So, yeah, I am real interested 5 years from now in like what the bust rate for the first round is for this draft versus your typical.
It'll be interesting to check. So then later in the day on the 16th, following the Devontae Smith commitment, came running back Evan Pryor, the number 6 running back in the nation, number 85 player overall, out of Cornelius, North Carolina. Tom, where is Cornelius?
It's in North Carolina.
Thank you. And
not to be confused with UConn Cornelius. That's different. That's
much different. So Evan Pryor was one of Ohio State's top 3 or 4 running backs, and it seems like they were going to take the first 2 of this group to commit, and they're still working on another. We'll get to him later. But watching Evan Pryor, he's a fast dude. I think he only rushed for like 900 yards last year, which is always kind of a why, and he averaged like around 6 or so yards per carry. Maybe it's because he split carries. Maybe it's because he's in a really good league. But he's got some. His film. I saw somebody on the board on the forum mention. Kind of reminds him of Travis Etienne from Clemson. I think that's not a terrible comparison. They're very similar. Not necessarily the guy who you expect to bust through some tackles, but miss and can hit the home run, but is also not just a waif. Is listed at 5'10", 190. So that's about what J.K. Dobbins was when he came in, and you saw how he left. So another, fine prospect, another top 100 guy, Tom. I'm kind of bored by it all.
You look at some of the guys that they're signing, and it's like, wow, this guy is one of the absolute best players in the country. He also lowers the average rating of the player in this class right now. Yeah, I forget who it was. I think it was the next guy we're going to talk about, Andre Turrentine. But it was like, wow, he is only 2 or 3 other Big Ten players currently committed are rated higher than him, and he lowers the average ranking of Ohio State's class. Like, that is just running back. Obviously, a huge position of need this time, this cycle. They had a couple guys that they thought they were going to get last year, who they didn't end up getting for various reasons, and a lot of blame got heaped on Tony Alford for that, and that probably was not entirely fair, based on some extraneous circumstances with the decision processes for at least one of those guys. And, Tony Alford has done a pretty good job developing J.K. Dobbins the last couple of years, and that running back room is still pretty talented, but you've got guys who, that's a position where you're going to have guys turning pro after 3 years. If they're, if they are NFL ready prospects, you're going to go after 3 years. So if Master Teague puts up a 1,600-yard season, Master Teague could go after. If Marcus Crowley or Steel Chambers puts up a 1,600-yard season next year, they could go after next year. Like, it seems like these guys just got here, and it's already like, well, could be done after this year. So you have to keep filling that room up. And, they got Mayan Williams in 2020. He was not at the top of their board. I think they're happy with him, but he was not at the top of their board. So getting someone like Pryor, having him already basically in place, and then a couple other pretty good options at the top of the board there, they are set up for success. Is
Carlos Hyde the last Buckeye running back to use all of his eligibility? Like him and Jordan Hall, I guess, because you got Ezekiel Elliott, Curtis Samuel, who still left being a running back. Rod Smith was suspended. Mike Weber left. Antonio Williams left. Ezekiel Elliott left. J.K. Dobbins left. And so...
Yeah, he might be. I mean, DeMario McCall could be on the verge of doing it this year.
Yeah, that's true. He could be the fifth-year guy. And he hasn't even gotten to spend all of his career.
Right, yeah, he's bounced around.
So that would be, 2013 was when Carlos Hyde left. So there's also that just a turnover is difficult to handle. But again, if you're recruiting those kind of guys, you sort of to expect it and then deal with it. And if you there are worse problems to create than our running backs are too good. We keep losing them too early. We've got to stop this madness, and let's find us some 5-year guys. Let's get us a guy. We've got to redshirt him. Then we won't let him play his redshirt freshman year because he's just not good enough. And by his 5th year, then maybe we can get a good 400 or 500 yards out of him, because we've got 4 other 5th-year guys and they aren't as good as him. And we'll just go by committee. Brandon Sane 2.0 and Mo Wells 1.1. And it sounds like just a dream scenario.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly do seem like there are Big Ten teams that if that's not their goal, they're not doing a very good job of making that not happen. But yeah, that has definitely not been how it's gone for Ohio State. And you look at J.K. Dobbins and his 3-year career. If you could get that out of everyone, they would sign up for that immediately tomorrow. Like, just get us one of those every 3 years, and you're good. But you've got guys who get hurt, and you will have the Mike Webbers who maybe could have had that kind of career, but he got hurt and couldn't stay on the field all the time. And you don't know when you're signing these guys up, because J.K. Dobbins missed his senior year of high school with a pretty bad ankle injury. So you never know whether that's, you have one bad step or one awkward fall or whatever, and that can sidetrack your career a little bit. Seen that with Master Teague this spring, getting hurt. You had that with Marcus Crowley last fall, getting hurt. Both of those guys have looked fantastic at times when they've been on the field, but you never know. So it's a spot where you have to have depth, but it's a little like quarterback where you're not going to play, you're not rotating 6 running backs like you rotate 6 wide receivers. There are only so many guys you can keep happy in that room, feeding them the ball enough for them to be happy. Because if they're coming in as a top 100 prospect, they're not expecting to come in and be a 5-year guy. They're expecting to come in, play 3, maybe, and then be off to the league. That is the expectation with the level of player that Ohio State's recruiting.
No, you're right. At running back, you have to have depth, and I'm going to coin this thing regarding the depth. At running back, you have to have a pair and also an extra guy behind that pair.
That's pretty good. I wish you could make it rhyme, but
you have to have two and
a crew.
2 and a crew. No, well, what's a crew? Crew is 3 or more, I believe. So 5 is a lot. You have to have a deuce and a Bruce. Don't want deuce and a juice.
Yeah, we'll have to workshop this. It's just it's odd. You would think someone would have come up with something quippier than this by now. I mean, football. This has been a truism of football for long enough. You would think someone would have a better phrase for it, but apparently not.
No, that's too bad. But we'll have something maybe for next week or the week after that, or possibly next year. The 4th commitment of the week, as Tom mentioned, Andre Turrentine. Are we going Turrentine?
Turrentine. And just say it with authority, and everyone will go, "Oh, okay." I'm sure they're right.
No, I've been pronouncing it Turrentine all along, but I have been doing it without authority, and I heard somebody else do it with authority, and so that must be how it is. And also, don't say Turrentine. No, it's Andre Turrentine.
It's also not turpentine.
No. Andre Turrentine out of Nashville, Tennessee, which interestingly enough is where Kerry Combs last worked. I'm sure it's, has nothing to do with that. Tom, do you think Kerry Combs was recruiting while he was with the Tennessee Titans?
I'm pretty sure that would be a violation of NCAA rules, so I'm sure that wasn't happening. But, it may have come up in his conversations with Andre since Kerry Combs has been on the Ohio State staff. Hey, I also have lived in Nashville recently. Hey, do you actually, it's a funny story. Do you know what I did professionally while I was there? I coached players who played defensive back. Oh, is that your position? Oh, how interesting. It was in the NFL. Do you want to play in that league? Oh, you do. Wow. This seems like Kismet. Is that, did you just get chills?
Yeah,
I think
do you
that's
feel
basically
that?
how that conversation went. Did we just become best friends?
So, as I said, 24/7 lists him as the number 6 safety, the number 136 player overall, and as Tom said, he brings the recruiting rankings down. The number 3 player in the state of Tennessee. Ohio State now has 14 commitments. 9 of them are in the top 100. Ben Christman just outside at 107. That's unfortunate. That's one reason, Tom, to get these rankings reshuffled, because that's just, you got a little. It's like a hangnail, Ben Crispin right there. They got to get him back into that 100. But Turrentine, another guy who corner safety, you get him in and you figure it out. 6 foot 175, another fast guy. And as we always say, when they're taking him this early, that means they like him.
Yeah, and if you look at the guys who they've got for the defensive backfield, Devontae Smith, 6 feet tall. Jalen Johnson, 6'1". Andre Turrentine, 6 foot. And Ja'Kalen Johnson, 6 foot. Like, all of these guys are big enough to play wherever. They're big enough to be safeties. You probably need to put some weight on some of these guys.
Yeah. If
you wanted to play safety, but they're tall enough to be safeties. They're tall enough to be outside corners. Like, you're not going to be, that's not a great matchup against like a 6'5" receiver, but you're tall enough that you can be, you're fine. You're not, like a 5'9" guy who's like definitely going to be a slot corner. And I think that's what they're looking for. They're looking for a little bit of flexibility. They're looking for athleticism and guys who can do enough things that it's like, yeah, we can work with that. We can find, this is someone that could play slot corner. This is a guy who could play outside corner. This is a guy who could play safety. We needed to play safety. That's what they're looking for. I mean, this is this is the Sean Wade package. Like this, they called him a Swiss Army knife last year because it's like, yeah, he can do kind of whatever we need him to do. Some of those guys will end up being better outside corners or better slot corners or better safeties, and that's fine. But you get them, you get the pieces, you get the raw materials, and then you form them into what you want and figure out who fits best once you get them on campus. If you have enough talented athletes, you're going to end up just fine. You don't want to be in the spot they're in right now where it's like, they're a little thin on corners. So they're kind of reloading now, and it sure seems like they'll be just, if you asked right now, how will they be in like 2022 in the defensive backfield? Like you'd probably feel pretty good about where they are, even though they've been a little thin a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's another reason why we're going to see a bit of a run here on defensive backs for the Buckeyes. And Turrentine committed over offers from Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Michigan, Penn State, USC, all of those guys. So that's another good sign. Look at who else is offering that. Recruiting rankings are fun. We both like them, but pay attention to who is offering the guy and insight. So that was Ohio State's week.
One thing before we move off of the recruiting, one thing that was very interesting to me was some of these guys talked about the fact that they're coming to Ohio State because of the opportunity to go up against the wide receivers that they're going up. Like that's a big draw for these defensive backs in practice. Like, yeah, I'm going to get a chance to go up against Marvin Harrison Jr. in practice, or Guy Scott, or Julian Fleming, or who,
1 year with Garrett Wilson.
Well, yeah, you might get 1 year with Garrett Wilson. But yeah, I mean, you've got an opportunity to play against NFL caliber players in practice every single day. That's how you get better. I mean, you may have heard this one before. Iron sharpens other metal. That's another, I mean, much like the pair of running backs and then the other guy.
Right.
Iron sharpens other metal. That's another good truism that you hear a lot in the recruiting world. That's something that I think you are seeing play out in Ohio State. Kerry Combs is obviously an attraction, but the guys who you're lining up against across from every day in practice, that's another thing that makes Ohio State a very attractive team.
Could we say ore sharpens ore?
Well, we could, but that we would need another person on this podcast.
So that's just the commitments that Ohio State has gotten this week. I don't know if they're going to get some more this spring. They probably will, but they are doing well and with other guys as well, particularly Trevion. Are we going to say Trevion Henderson? Travion? Let's go Travion.
Travion.
That's what I want to. He is the 5-star running back, number 2 running back in the nation, out of Hopewell, Virginia. Ohio State past Hopewell guys. Is that where Derek Green perhaps? It's Michigan, but he is the number 2 running back in the nation, number 17 player overall. Crystal balls are starting to roll in for him, and if you like Ohio State, I like Evan Pryor's film. Donovan Edwards' film is nice as well. But if you go watch Travion Henderson, you will think that he is better than those guys. They're all like the same size, like 5'11", 190. But some of these guys some players just look different, and he's one of those. And they can get, last year it was Bijan Robinson. He's going to be a Buckeye, 5-star guy, dynamic, incredible, average over 10 yards per carry, I think like 15 yards, something like that. And of course that fizzled out, because he wanted to be closer to home. Now they've already got Evan Pryor and one of their top 4 targets, let's say. Travion Henderson, another of those top 4 targets. Last year rushes for 2,400 yards on 212 yards a carry. So he's definitely a dynamic playmaker. And this has been, as you said, Tony Alford he's been getting some pub this week on Twitter. And I think some of it is also coming from just the moves that have been made on Travion Henderson. That's, he had some scheduled official visits this spring that aren't going to happen, but it tells me that he probably wouldn't mind committing before the season. If you're looking at getting your visits in, you want to make a decision pretty quickly. And then once there is this run on crystal balls, like everybody's starting to make them. Now, granted, I say everybody, there's only 5 in there, but they've all been coming in the last couple of days. He did come out and say Ohio State is number 1. But when when you are the 5-star top 24/7 Sports own rankings, he is the top running back in the nation. We'll see how quickly he goes, and it would be a surprise if he went too quickly in terms of committing. But right now, everything looks good for him in the Buckeye.
Yeah, I mean, when in doubt, when they ask the highly ranked kid who your top school is, you'd like it when he says your school's name right after that. That's how that's worked out. So that's good news for Ohio State. They already have the number 6 running back in the country, Evan Pryor, and then they are considered probably the front runners right now for the number 2 and number 3 running backs in the country. And at the moment, the biggest looming issue is they probably don't have room for all 3. So you may have to settle for only 2 of the top 6 running backs in the country in this one class, and telling one of them, no, thank you, we're all full now. So, I know Henderson is, you wonder about the timetable with all of the uncertainty right now. This is almost an unprecedented thing where obviously if you were taking your officials in the spring, clearly you're trying to get your decision made out of the way. And then generally that's I want to focus on my senior season kind of thing. And, not have to worry about recruiting visits, not have to worry about, your phone ringing off the hook or texts. Just get your decision out of the way, lock it down, be done. So yeah, if you are the team that is out in front for a guy that is looking to potentially get it done pretty quickly, and it's a 5-star guy, all of that is good. That is what you want. That's what you're looking for, and that would give Ohio State right now in the composite has Kyle McCord, the quarterback, as a 5-star prospect. Jack Sawyer, the defensive end, is a 5-star prospect. Travion Henderson would give them a third 5-star prospect. And they are right in the running for 3 more of the guys who are in the top 10 overall in the country. This is a class that is already, if you just take the rankings of just the 14 or 15 players they've got committed right now, that would have been enough to put Ohio State's class 13th overall last year in the 2020 class. And they have room for 10 more players. And it seems like they're going to finish with several more 5-star players. That is as remarkable as Ohio State's classes have been under Urban Meyer over the years. This could be the best class Ohio State has ever brought in. Better than the 2017 class that had Okudah and Dobbin, Wyatt Davis and Chase Young. Better than that. This could be an unprecedented great class for Ohio.
Yeah, and right now Jack Sawyer is the number 2 player in the class. The former teammate of G. Scott out in Washington, defensive tackle JT Tuimoloau.
No. See, you said it right, but you said it with your voice going up at the end. Nope, just say it like you believe it, and you're correct.
Tuimoloau.
There your tone wasn't great, but yeah, you said it correctly. Yes.
JT, the number 1 defensive tackle, he received a crystal ball projection from Bill Kurelic just yesterday or on Tuesday. So he's got, there's only 4 of them that have been made, 4 projections for him, 2 of them for Ohio State. So there's a guy, and then another Washington prospect right down in there as well is Emeka. Lost it there. Yes,
Emeka Egbuka.
Yeah, sorry, my dog walked into the room and distracted me. Another guy who I think is listed as an athlete, but is a receiver. And if you're a receiver right now, you are looking at Ohio State. And I know Washington has 2 of the 4 crystal balls. Ohio State has 1. But he's a guy that...
None of them are recent, though.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't really...
We'll see what happens when the run starts there. But I know there are some people who believe he will end up a Buckeye, or certainly wouldn't be surprised by it. When you look at what Ohio State already has at receiver and has had to tell some guys, even like Lorenzo Styles in state, we kind of like you as a corner, while others like Notre Dame are saying, you can come play receiver for us. Ohio State is getting into some rare air of you've got to be really, really good to be a receiver for us. And, I think certainly Egbuka is one of those guys that they would gladly take as a receiver.
Yeah, you're probably not going to turn down a top 10 overall player in the country almost no matter what, unless there are character issues, and there are no indications of issues here. The biggest concern for Ohio State right now is, okay, they've already got a couple receivers in this class, and they're both top 100 kids in the nation. But how many wide receivers can they take this year? They took 5 last year. Like, you can't have 20 wide receivers out of your 85-man roster. Like, the numbers have to work to a certain degree, and you have to have you can only get the ball to so many guys at a time. So I can't imagine they're going to take more than 3 receivers this year. Maybe 4. Maybe if one of them's kind of a swing guy, but you have to make the numbers work. And as much as I'm sure Brian Hartline would love to take 5 receivers who are all top 100 players like he did last year, you can't do that every year. So yeah, but if they Emeka Egbuka, yeah, I think he's probably a take for Ohio State. Same thing for JT Tuimoloau, who is a defensive tackle. He's the one who was high school teammates G. Scott. G. Scott had said when he came in on signing day, he was the first scholarship player from the state of Washington since Kevin Griffin in 1998. He wants to make sure that starts being a little bit of a pipeline for them. And both of those guys, Egbuka and Tuimoloau, are both from the kind of greater Seattle area. So those are guys that are probably going to be bumping into each other at camps and all that kind of stuff. And, if G. Scott continues to have a good freshman year at Ohio State and a good experience, he's going to be probably in both of their ears to the degree that he can be, encouraging them to come out and take a look. And, this is actually not such a bad place, it turns out. This is kind of a fun place to come and play football and go to school and all that kind of stuff, even if you're flying all the way across the country.
But then, Tom, what if Troy Stellato then is also like, yeah, I would like to be a Buckeye as well?
Yeah, that's realistically, I do wonder. I mean, it sounds like Stellato is trending towards Clemson. That's sort of the overall consensus. He's a South Florida guy. I wonder if you end up getting, they may get to a point where it's like, we can only take one more wide receiver in this class. Those two are both people I think they would like to have, but if they get either one of them, like, yep, they're fine. I don't think wide receiver is a big position of concern right now. Even if they end up just where they are right now with Marvin Harrison and Jaden Ballard, like, I don't think wide receiver is a real big position of concern if that's where they end up.
I think what would help if they did want to take 4 or so is they only took 2 2019 with Garrett Wilson and Jameson Williams. So there is some room there to expand. So yeah, that's some crazy stuff going on with Ohio State recruiting, and that's, Tom. Are we in? Is it August yet, or is it still March?
Yeah, it seems like we should be getting pretty close to the season, but yeah, it's going to be funny. This has the possibility of being one of those like Mac Brown Texas classes where it fills up, and it fills up like 6 months before before signing day, because I mean you've already got how many 14 commits. So you got 14 commits, and we haven't talked about J.C. Latham, who is number 6 offensive tackle in the country. He's an IMG kid out of Florida. But 6'5", 285, kind of that prototypical offensive tackle size where there's probably not any bad weight there, and it's just a matter of, okay, put the good weight on there, a little bit of a project, but number 42 overall player in the country. He's someone who has been trending very strongly towards Ohio State. You're at 14 right now, and we're talking about multiple other guys who seem like they're probably pretty close to coming on. The absolute hard cap is 25. We'll see what the actual numbers end up being in terms of how many they can really take. If it's like 23, like you're already starting to get towards full, and it's not even officially spring yet.
Well, and let's talk about where they are numbers wise right now, which I believe is 87, including C.J. Saunders, 86 if we do not include him. Is that what you've got as well?
I think I had 86 with Saunders.
Okay, well, this is awkward then.
It's close. They're 1 or 2 over, and there's a fairly consistent feeling that they may add Trey Sermon, the running back from Oklahoma, as a transfer.
Yeah,
that certainly seems to be the consensus around the program right now, is that may happen soon. So then you're at 87, 88. You're going to have you will always have people transfer. They have their potential medical retirement folks on the roster as well. Like they are not like wildly over right now. They don't want to be over at all, but they're close enough that they're within the margin of error, I would say, right now. But then you've got probably 17-ish seniors on the team next year, I think, if I counted correctly, scholarship guys. You have a few more who turn pro. They'll be north of 20, but whether it's 23 or 25 that they can take next year, that'll depend a little bit on how many guys turn pro, how many guys transfer, how many, I think it's a little hard to forecast this far out just because this time last year, I don't think you would have guessed that Brendan White would be leaving in the middle of the season to transfer to Rutgers. Like that, I don't think that's anything that was anywhere on anyone's radar. Hard to tell in general.
Future defensive MVP of the season, Brendan White, as we would have thought at this point last year. But getting back to Trey Sermon, last year, season was cut short after 10 games. Only rushed for 385 yards, averaging 7 yards per carry. He finished fourth on the team in rushing. But the year before, he rushed for 947 yards at 5.8 per carry. Led the team with 13 touchdowns, finished third again, behind Kennedy Brooks and Kyler Murray, who both went over 1,000 that year. And then as a true freshman, I believe he's a true freshman, in 2017 rushed for 744 yards, averaging 6.2 a carry. So there's a history of him doing pretty well, but that offense, guys tend to do well, but if he came to Ohio State, he would also be in an offense, Tom, where things go pretty well for running backs. It's wide open spaces. We've seen it be successful. K. Dobbins. My only concern is Trey Sermon is a guy with injury history, even back in high school, and you're bringing him in to help shore up a room with injury history. But I guess if you've got 5 guys and 2.5 of them stay healthy, then I guess you'll be okay.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that it's a little bit of insurance, and it's not that he's guaranteed to be a star if he comes to Ohio State, but he is a proven commodity, just as a player. You've seen him on the field. You know what you're getting, more or less. And if he's healthy, he's the kind of back who's going to be, if he's healthy in the starter, you would feel pretty good about the fact of him having like a 1,200-yard season or something like that. I think you'd feel reasonably confident that he could do that if he stays healthy. You've got so many potential question marks in that room right now. Master Teague, and how, where is he in terms of his recovery? Marcus Crowley, when is he going to be 100% after having a knee injury? That was in the Maryland game last year, so that was kind of like mid-season. So he's probably should be back to full go by the time fall camp rolls around, but you never know. You could have a setback. Sometimes things take a little longer to heal than you expect. If you have another guy who's, say both of those guys are 75% sure to be ready to be contributors, get another guy who's 75% sure. You've got Steel Chambers, you've got Mayan Williams coming in. Like they have enough guys who are, that would give you enough people who are not guarantees, but reasonable enough odds that they're ready to be contributors, and if they're healthy, they will be contributors. That you would feel pretty good about that. It's like signing one more starting pitcher for your rotation. I mean, this is like what the Los Angeles Dodgers have done in baseball. It's like they keep signing these guys. It's, well, that guy's a little bit of an injury risk, but it's like, well, if we have 12 of them, like 5 of them are going to be healthy, and when they're healthy, they're good. Like there's probably a little bit of that in there, because that was a pretty bad knee injury he suffered last year. That was in the Iowa State game, I believe, Trey Sermon, and missed the rest of the year. So, he's not a total guarantee to be coming in at exactly 100%. I have looked and tried to find, get some decent information on exactly where he is in his recovery, and is he good to go now or not, and that really isn't out there. So, it's a little bit of a question mark, but you bring in someone else who's, a reasonable, if he's healthy, he'll be good to go, and there's a reasonable chance he's healthy. Like that's worth spending a scholarship on this fall and see how it ends up.
What you're explaining to me, Tom, is like a 3-headed monster at running back, where each guy gets 8 to 12 carries. And I don't know if that is ideal, because the last time they did that was 2011 with Boom Herron, Carlos Hyde, and Jordan Hall. And we saw how that season went. Now, was it entirely because they split the carries between 3 running backs? Nobody knows.
Yeah,
nobody knows.
Exactly how monstrous were those 3 heads? That's the next question that you could raise as a potential question mark there. But,
granted, they all fell behind Braxton Miller in terms of the rushing total, but you had Boom Herron rushed for 670 yards, averaging 5 yards. Carlos Hyde, 566 at 5.3 yards per carry. And Jordan Hall had 100 rushing attempts for 408 yards. I can't do the math.
I'm just gonna go out on a limb and guess that the passing game in 2020 may be better than the 2011 passing game, which should help open things up a little bit more for the run game.
I'm
just gonna go way out on a limb and just guess that.
These are dangerous times, Tom. We don't want to be making dangerous proclamations. There's just no way to know other than, you know what? Let's just hope for the best. Maybe things will turn out finally for the Ohio State offense, even if they have to go with 3 running backs. It would be bizarre though, where we're so used to a guy getting, it was bizarre the 2018 when JK and Mike Weber would split each series. Neither of them liked it. So then you go, if it's 3 guys, how do you handle that? Do you go with the hot hand? Does each guy get a series? They play once a quarter. These are always, Oklahoma has done well with it, and other programs have. But at Ohio State, it would be interesting to watch. And then you just go with the guy in the fourth quarter. All right, you each have 1 quarter, and we'll see who the man is. But then that kind of abandons, or it's like if you would do that, then the guy you trust, you just give all of the carries to or whatever. You make them the workhorse of the fourth quarter, meaning that you would prefer a workhorse, but you only do it for 1 quarter. So there's some things to work out as we talk about this possibility that may or may not happen with the 4 or 5 odd running backs who would then have to accept.
Yeah, and this is the 3 running backs thing has worked out just fine for recent years. That's something that they've ridden pretty hard. It helps keep their guys fresh, and if someone goes down with an injury, if you're concerned about the health of 2 or 3, it does sort of mitigate your risk a little bit, where if someone does go down, now you've gone from 3 to 2. It's not like last year, like, oh, that's not great. You saw what it looked like when J.K. Dobbins went down. And if you have a couple guys who are a little more on the same level, that would not be the worst thing they could possibly. If you have too many players, that is not the worst possible.
Well, granted, that is your opinion. I'm not going to denigrate you for that opinion. Actually, yeah, let's go ahead and talk bad about you. But no, looking at that 2018 Alabama team that you're talking about with Damian Harris and Najee Harris and Josh Jacobs, who ends up going to the first round. Maybe that's what the Buckeyes will have, where each guy is pretty much. The Damian Harris led the team with 150 carries in 15. Josh Jacobs had 120 carries. Najee Harris had 117. So that's pretty well evenly split. And we are in an age where I believe it was Evan Pryor, it may have been Donovan Edwards. I think it was Evan Pryor who was like, I don't mind being one of 2 running backs in the class, because I don't mind being one of 2 running backs getting the carries. And now so many guys are focused on, I don't want all of the tread on my tires worn down before I even get to the NFL. So these guys today are much more open to splitting carries in college, even though as a guy like J.K. Dobbins would tell you, I'd love to have it 30 times a game. He was still a good soldier at 18. It did hurt his game. But more and more, you're seeing guys are like, 12, 13 carries, whatever, I'm good with that. This is a vehicle to get to the NFL. 25 carries, 30 carries. That doesn't really happen much anyway. And for the guys who it does happen to, they don't last very.
No, and I'm just looking right now, as you're talking, looking up Trent Richardson's college stats. Because before Nick Saban had a 3 running back rotation, he had a 1 running back rotation with Trent Richardson, who in 2011, 283 carries for 1,679. Trent Richardson as a pro didn't last very long, didn't run, didn't work out all that well for the Browns. And you have to think part of that was just he had absorbed a lot of hits already. That's a position that has a relatively short career span. In the pros, and it's just you're getting hit every time you touch the ball. You're getting drilled, and you're possibly getting drilled by multiple players at the same time, and a defensive lineman falling on you and all that kind of stuff, and that can wear you out. So managing that workload, that is, that shows some intelligence and long-term thinking out of guys. That's for to be already thinking about that kind of stuff as a high school player and not just saying, no, I just want to be the only guy. I want to be the only guy who does this and who's the bell cow, as the old TV guys used to say. That shows some long-term thinking and some long-term vision that is pretty impressive for someone who's still in high school.
I'm surprised that Derrick Henry has been as good as he is in the NFL after 2015, 395 carries in 15 games. That's 26 carries a game. And this is a guy who carried it 20, 30 times a game in high school as well. But then his first 2 years at Alabama, he was splitting carries. And his first year, he only had 35. But as a sophomore, he had 172 to T.J. Yeldon's 194. And then they went Javon Ringer with them basically in 2015 and just gave him the ball every time. That's why I just always thought he would have too much wear and tear to be a successful long-term running back. Not that there are many long-term running backs, and not that he is a long-term running back yet, but we'll see if he can go past 5-6 years in the NFL. Tom, was there anything else that we needed to talk about?
I think we're good, and we have we may do another show in the next few days or early next week, because I'm sure that everyone, there's not an overabundance of stuff to do right now for a lot of people, and a lot of the media out there is kind of depressing. So I'm sure. As much as I'm enjoying just getting to think about and talk about Ohio State football for a while, I'm sure people are probably also enjoying just getting to listen to and think about Ohio State football for a while. So this may work out for everyone if we do another show at some point, a little sooner than we.
Right, and because we do have the Josh Gaddis thing to talk about, we can tease that. We will discuss that so that you guys don't think we're forgetting about that. But that will be Tom, a 4 or 5 hour show.
Yeah, at least maybe more. I mean, we can talk about all the things that they've learned and all the ways that they've beaten themselves in the last couple.
That might be a show we should actually prepare for, which means it's not like we've got a lot of stuff to do at this point. While we're hunkering, maybe, just maybe some preparation. I don't know. Crazy thought. Probably out of bounds to say that.
We are living in very unusual times. This would certainly be the most unusual.
All right. So we want to thank everybody for listening. We do appreciate it. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back for more shortly. Take care of yourselves out there. Please continue to read theozone.net. Listen to the podcasts. Buckeye Sleepcast Mondays and Fridays right now. And we'll kick some other guys in there eventually once we get underway with sports. Tom, you got anything to say?
Nope. Just hope you guys are all staying safe and taking care of each other. And please look out for your neighbors and your friends. And if there's anything, if you have older neighbors who, you live around and just check in on them every once in a while, see how they're doing. If you can help them in some way, if you happen to have an extra roll of toilet paper or a jar of Lysol wipes or whatever people need, and you can share it with them, let's keep taking care of each other, because we're all, as Ryan Day said, and on the video he released on Wednesday, we are all in.
Yep, and go ahead, get some delivery from some local places as well. Help those people out as well. And we will talk to you guys shortly. Thanks.
stronger. I can't take it any longer. Say you will, now say you will. Oh yeah. Say you will, now say you will. If you tell me that tomorrow's alright, we can steal a car and leave tonight. Well, I came in for a goodbye kiss, but I could never have imagined this. Say you will, now say you will. Oh yeah. Say you will, now say you will. Say you will, now say you will. If you tell me that tomorrow